In the years after the First World War, the Royal Navy faced an uncertain future. The great fleets that had clashed at Jutland were no longer needed in such numbers. Budgets shrank, priorities shifted, and the world seemed to be sliding, perhaps, toward peace. But the lessons of the Great War had left their mark. During the conflict, Britain had built dozens of fast, lightly armed destroyers to screen its battle fleet and chase down submarines. By 1917, newer designs had emerged, bigger, faster, more capable. These became the V and W class destroyers, the cutting edge of naval warfare at the time. They were tough, with sharp bows and two tall funnels. Designed to run at more than 34 knots, they carried 4-inch guns and 2 banks of torpedoes. When they entered service, they were among the most advanced destroyers in the world. But wars end, and technology does not stand still. By the 1930s, the V and W class ships were showing their age. Their engines were tired, their armament outdated. Newer destroyers with bigger guns and better range were joining the fleet. The V and W class ships might well have been destined for the scrapyard. Yet fate had other plans. When war came again in 1939, the Royal Navy was stretched thin. Britain needed destroyers, lots of them, to escort convoys, patrol home waters, and guard against U-boats. New ships were under construction, but they would take years to arrive. In the meantime, the Admiralty turned to its reserves. The old V and W class destroyers, relics of another era, were pulled from reserve and pressed into service once more. They were refitted, modernized, and given new roles. Torpedo tubes were reduced, extra depth charge throwers were added. Some received radar, high-angle guns, and sonar. Their speed was lower now, but their endurance was greater. They became escort destroyers, not glamorous, not fast, but vital. The stage was set. And in the crucible of the Second World War, several of these aging veterans would earn their place in history. Among the V and W class destroyers, few earned greater fame than HMS Walker. Laid down in the final months of the First World War, Walker and many of her sisters entered service too late to see action. For 2 decades she served quietly, a training ship and fleet destroyer. By 1939, she was already considered obsolete. Yet when war broke out, she was converted into an escort and sent into the North Atlantic. There, she became a hunter of U-boats. The Battle of the Atlantic was the longest continuous campaign of the Second World War. It was not fought in great clashes, but in thousands of deadly encounters across stormy seas. German U-boats prowled the shipping lanes, hunting the merchant convoys that carried Britain's lifeline of food, fuel, and weapons. To starve Britain into submission, the U-boats needed only to sink enough ships. To survive, the Royal Navy needed to protect them. HMS Walker proved equal to the task. She was assigned to escort duty, shepherding convoys across the grey waters of the Atlantic. Her crew learned the rhythms of the battle, hours scanning sonar screens, sudden alarms when a submarine was sighted, depth charges thundering into the sea. Her greatest moment came in March 1941, during the defense of convoy HX 112. That night, the convoy was attacked by a wolf pack of U-boats. Among them was U-99, commanded by Otto Kretschmer, the most successful U-boat commander of the war. Kretschmer's name was feared throughout the Atlantic. He had sunk more than 270,000 tons of Allied shipping. Cool under pressure and deadly in attack, he was the pride of the German Navy. But this time, he had met his match. As Kretschmer closed on the convoy, Walker and her fellow escort HMS Vanoc moved to intercept. Their sonar operators picked up U-99 as she maneuvered in the darkness. Depth charges thundered into the sea, rocking the submarine. Kretschmer tried to escape, but the escorts pressed their attack relentlessly. Finally, battered and leaking, U-99 was forced to the surface. Searchlights cut through the night, catching the submarine as she broke the waves. Walker's guns opened fire. Kretschmer, realizing the end had come, ordered his crew to abandon ship. U-99 slipped beneath the waves for the last time. Otto Kretschmer, the scourge of the Atlantic, was taken prisoner. His capture was a massive morale boost for Britain and a crushing blow to the U-boat fleet. For Walker and her crew, it was a moment of triumph. A worn-out destroyer, older than many of her sailors, had brought down Germany's deadliest submarine commander. It was proof that in war, skill, determination, and courage could make even the oldest ships into legends. While Walker achieved glory in victory, another V and W-class ship became famous for sacrifice. HMS Veteran was among the first destroyers to be converted for long-range escort work. She lost some of her torpedoes to make room for extra fuel tanks, depth charges, and anti-submarine weapons. With these modifications, she became an unyielding veteran of convoy duty, battling U-boats and protecting merchantmen in the roughest seas. For 3 years, Veteran carried out her duty without complaint. She fought in the bitter cold of the Arctic, where ice formed on the decks and ships had to be hacked free with axes. She escorted convoys through the endless grey swells of the Atlantic, where men lived for days on end at action stations. But in September 1942, her luck ran out. Veteran was escorting convoy RB-1, a slow group of merchantmen making their way across the Atlantic. Unknown to them, a German U-boat wolf pack was lying in wait. As the convoy steamed through heavy seas, the submarine struck. Torpedoes ripped into the merchant ships, flames lighting the night. Veteran rushed to the attack, charging the U-boats with depth charges. But the submarines were skilled, and the odds were against her. In the chaos, Veteran herself was struck. A torpedo slammed into her hull, tearing her apart. Within minutes, she was gone, taking nearly all her crew with her. There were only few survivors. Her loss was a heavy blow. Yet her name became a symbol of the countless escort destroyers that gave their lives to keep the convoys moving. She did not win a dramatic duel like Walker. But in her sacrifice lay the essence of the Battle of the Atlantic, ordinary ships and ordinary sailors, holding the line at terrible cost, so that others might live. HMS Veteran became a reminder that victory in war often comes not from the glory of great battles, but from the quiet endurance of those who stand their watch to the end. Not every V and W-class destroyer earned her fame in battle. Some became legends through endurance, others through moments of rescue. One such ship was HMS Whitshed. In May 1940, Britain faced disaster. The German blitzkrieg had swept across France and Belgium, trapping the British Expeditionary Force on the beaches of Dunkirk. Operation Dynamo, the evacuation, was Britain's only hope. Hundreds of thousands of men had to be lifted from the beaches under constant attack. Whitshed, though nearly 20 years old, was thrown into the fight. Again and again, she crossed the Channel, ferrying soldiers back to England. Her decks overflowed with troops, muddy, exhausted, desperate. German bombers struck the beaches, shells rained down, but Whitshed pressed on. By the end, she had carried thousands to safety. She was not alone, dozens of destroyers and little ships joined the effort. But Whitshed's service at Dunkirk symbolized the role of the V and W class. They endured the endless monotony and terror of the Atlantic. Their crews froze in Arctic gales, their decks swept by icy seas. They fought off submarines, rescued survivors, and escorted freighters to safety. Their fame did not come from single decisive actions. It came from persistence. From being there again and again, through years of hardship. They had been old when the war began, and yet they had carried Britain through its darkest days. HMS Walker's victory over Kretschmer. HMS Veteran's sacrifice. HMS Whitshed's rescue at Dunkirk. HMS Whitshed and HMS Volunteer's endless escort duty. Their names may not shine as brightly as Hood or Warspite. But to the men who sailed in them, and the merchant crews they protected, the V and W class destroyers were the difference between survival and defeat. They were old ships. But in their twilight, they became immortal. From the gun decks to the bridge, every story we tell honors those who served. If this tale made you feel the salt and steel of history, give it a like, and if you're not yet part of our channel's convoy, subscribe and join the ranks. More powerful stories await.